Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Madame Julie Robert was waiting for her older sister, Madame Henriette Let-Or, who had just come back from a trip to Switzerland. The Let-Or family had left almost 5 weeks ago. Madame Henriette let her husband go back alone to their home in Calvados because he had some work to do there. She came to spend a few days in Paris with her sister. As night came, Madame Robert was sitting in a quiet room, reading in the dim light. She kept looking up whenever she heard a noise. Finally, she heard the doorbell ring, and her sister walked in, wearing a traveling cloak. Without saying anything, they hugged each other warmly. They stopped for a moment and then hugged again. Then they started talking about their health, their families, and many other things. They chatted quickly, their words coming out in short, broken sentences as they moved around the room while Madame Henriette took off her hat and veil. It was now very dark. Madame Robert asked for a lamp, and when it was brought in, she looked closely at her sister's face. She was about to hug her again, but she stopped, feeling scared and surprised by how her sister looked. Madame Let-Or had 2 big streaks of white hair on her temples. All the rest of her hair was shiny and black, but on each side of her head were 2 silver streaks that mixed into the black hair. She was only 24 years old, and this change had happened suddenly since she left for Switzerland. Without moving, Madame Robert stared at her sister in shock, tears coming to her eyes. She thought something very bad must have happened to her sister. She asked, "What is wrong with you, Henriette?" Henriette smiled sadly, the kind of smile someone has when their heart is hurting, and said, "Oh, nothing really. Did you notice my white hair?" But Madame Robert grabbed her shoulders and looked at her closely, asking again, "What is wrong with you? Tell me what's wrong. If you lie to me, I will know." They stood facing each other, and Madame Henriette, who looked like she was about to faint, had 2 tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Her sister continued, "What happened to you? What is wrong? Answer me." Then, in a quiet voice, the other whispered, I have a lover." Henriette hid her face on her younger sister's shoulder and cried. After a while, when she had calmed down a bit and her chest stopped shaking, she began to share her secret, as if she needed to take this sadness out of herself and share it with someone who cared. Holding each other's hands tightly, the 2 sisters walked over to a sofa in a dark corner of the room. They sat down, and the younger sister put her arm around the older one's neck, pulling her close and listening carefully. "Oh, I know there is no excuse for what I did. I don't even understand myself, and since that day, I feel like I've gone mad. Be careful, my dear, be careful. If only you knew how weak we can be, how quickly we give in and make mistakes. It takes so little, so very little, just a moment of feeling sad, a sudden wish to hold someone close, to love, to care for something. We all feel like this sometimes. You know my husband, and you know how much I care for him, but he is older and very sensible, and he doesn't understand the deep feelings of a woman's heart. He is always the same, always good, always smiling, always kind, always perfect. Oh! Sometimes I have wished he would hold me tightly in his arms, that he would kiss me slowly and sweetly, the way that makes two people feel like one. How I have wished he were silly, even weak, so that he would need me, need my hugs, need my tears. This might all sound very silly, but we women are made like this. We can't help it. And even though I thought about it, I never planned to deceive him. But now it has happened, without love, without reason, without anything, just because the moon was shining one night on the Lake of Lucerne. For a whole month, we traveled together, but my husband, with his calm and cold way, stopped me from feeling excited or happy. When we were going down the mountain paths at sunrise, when the 4 horses were running fast with the carriage, and we saw valleys, woods, streams, and villages in the soft morning light, I clapped my hands with joy and said to him, "How beautiful it is, dear. Give me a kiss. Kiss me now." But he only smiled kindly and said, "There is no reason to kiss just because you like the view." His words made me feel so cold inside. I think that when people love each other, they should feel more love than ever when they see something beautiful together. I was full of poetry and feelings that he kept me from showing. I felt like a pot filled with steam, tightly closed, ready to burst. One evening, we had been staying for 4 days in a hotel in Fleulen. Robert had one of his bad headaches. He went to bed right after dinner, and I decided to take a walk all by myself along the lake. It was a night like one from a fairy tale. The full moon was high in the sky. The tall mountains, with their snowy tops, looked like they were wearing silver crowns. The waters of the lake sparkled with tiny shining ripples. The air was soft and warm, the kind of warmth that makes you feel sleepy, deeply touched for no clear reason. How sensitive the heart is at such times. How quickly it beats, and how strong the feelings are. I sat down on the grass and looked at the big, sad, and beautiful lake. A strange feeling came over me. I felt a strong need for love, a rebellion against the boring dullness of my life. What? Would I never have the chance to walk arm in arm with a man I loved along a moonlit shore like this? Would I never feel those deep, sweet kisses on my lips, the kind that lovers share on nights that seem made by God for love? Would I never know passionate, intense love under the moonlit shadows of a summer night? And I started crying like a crazy woman. I heard something moving behind me. A man was standing there, looking at me. When I turned my head, he recognized me and came closer, saying, "Are you crying, madam?" It was a young lawyer who was traveling with his mother. We had seen him often. He had looked at me many times before. I was so embarrassed that I didn't know what to say or what to think. I told him I felt sick. He walked next to me in a calm and polite way and started talking to me about what we had seen during our trip. He put into words all the feelings I had, everything that excited me. He understood perfectly, even better than I did. Suddenly, he began to say some lines of poetry by Alfred de Musset. I felt my throat tighten, filled with a feeling I couldn't describe. It felt like the mountains, the lake, and the moonlight were all singing to me about things that were sweet beyond words. And then it happened, I don't know how, I don't know why, like a dream or an illusion. I didn't see him again until the morning he left. He gave me his card, and, falling into her sister's arms, Madame Letor began to cry loudly, almost like she was screaming. Then Madame Robert, staying calm and serious, said very softly, "You see, sister, sometimes it is not the man we love, but love itself. And your true love that night was the moonlight.